church say amen.
Amen.
Let the church say amen again.
Amen.
How many of you are happy to be in the house of the Lord? All right, let's try it one more time. How many of you are happy to be in the house of the Lord? Don't you let 11:15 a.m. outdo you. You are here, you are alive, you are well, and God has blessed you to be here this morning, so we celebrate Him. Real quick, as we are about to listen to this preacher extraordinary, man, I am excited today. If you are visiting with us here at Impact, Chris, take a little bit of the muffling out. If you're visiting with us, it's okay. Impactors know their pastor is crazy. I am totally, my wife would tell you, because I knew Pastor Jackson was coming today, I didn't even get the crust out of my eyes yesterday. I told them in the back, I told Terrence, I said, I ain't even take a shower yesterday. He said, well, that's rare, that's normal, ain't it? I said, Monday. So I am overjoyed to sit and receive the word of God. Listen, this brother is one of the most humble brothers you'll ever meet. Listen, he has been pastoring for a long time. He said he's been preaching about 4 or 5 years. And I say that to say that the generation that has come before me, I love them, I honor them, I respect them. And I never will forget that I preached in Southern Mission about 3 times in my life. And the first time, you're talking about an established pastor in this community who didn't have to let some young preacher come and preach. And I never will forget, I was 26 years old when I first came to preach, and I preached the message, Go Jesus. And being there in that atmosphere, the loving spirit there at Southern Mission, it was just so beautiful, because sometimes older pastors, they wait till young preachers get established and etc. But Pastor Jackson just has a heart for preachers and a heart for people. And he'll tell you in a moment, he's still in the phone book. You can just look him up in the phone book. I said, Pastor, what's a phone book? And he's in the phone book. He's just that humble of a brother. And I think it's our responsibility as younger pastors not to forget where we've come from and who has laid pathways for us. Because Lord's will, I'm going to get old too. And who wants to be forgotten, or who wants to, and that's not his case. But I'm just honored that he said yes to come and serve God's people today. So I want you, listen, he has never celebrated with us. He has no clue how we get down. Listen, he told me, I was walking him to the door at the administrative office when we did our video. He said, so you want me here at what time? And I said, bro, no, Pastor, you ain't preaching at the office. And it didn't matter to him. And I was sharing that with my wife today, how that just really touched my heart. And then I pray most of us, a lot of us, if not all of us, younger pastors and preachers carry that same spirit, that it's about our service and our message. So Impact, man, show him how we do it at this house. That as he comes, y'all give him so much love that he can't even stand it. So welcome to this house, the angel of Southern Mission, Missionary Baptist Church, none other than Pastor Jerome. Crazy little come on.
It's a good day, isn't it?
Yes.
It's a day that the Lord has made, and there is good cause for us to rejoice and be glad in the day. Let me take this opportunity to thank this pastor for opening this pulpit, this preaching place, for me to come and share with you today. He did not have to do that. I think that he thought that I didn't know what he was doing. He was joning me on this. See, you know, these young folks think that we done got old and senile. They don't know what's going on, you know. Yeah, I want to get old one day too. This is Lent, man. But again, thank you. Seriously, thank you for the invitation. Thank you for the kind words that you spoke. It's all about Jesus, isn't it?
Yes.
It's all about Jesus. And as I look over the audience, I see a couple of folk who done snuck away. Need to be somewhere else. I ain't gonna bust them out. I got them over here. You know. In the 11 o'clock or the 11:15 hour, for those of you who may be here, I'm going to be talking about please excuse my dust. Renovations underway. Please excuse my dust. Renovations underway. Today, if you have your Bibles and you want to follow along with me, turn to the Gospel according to Matthew chapter 9. I'm going to be reading verses 9 through 13. Matthew chapter 9, verses 9 through 13, and I'll be reading from the New International Version. So if yours sounds a bit different from mine, that'll be the reason. Commencing with verse 9, it says, As Jesus went on from there, he saw a man named Matthew sitting at the tax collector's booth. Follow me, he told him. And Matthew got up and followed him. While Jesus was having dinner at Matthew's house, many tax collectors and sinners came and ate with him and his disciples. When the Pharisees saw this, they asked his disciples, Why does your teacher eat with tax collectors and sinners? On hearing this, Jesus said, It is not the healthy who need a doctor, but the sick. But go and learn what this means. I have mercy. I desire mercy, not sacrifice. For I'm not come to call the righteous, but sinners. God bless his word. For just a few minutes today, I want to talk to you from this topic. Jesus came to save people where they are. Jesus came to save people. Come here, what you been? Jesus came to save people where they are. No matter who you are, where you've been, or what you've done. God loves you. Y'all do whatever you got to do. You ain't gonna bother me. I have a confession. I have a confession to make this morning. I don't always agree with God. Now I know that you don't have that struggle, but I do. I had to go through a process. Where I could get to the point where I could even admit that. Like most of us, I've been conditioned to say something like, whatever God does is all right with me. I was running around, saying that same thing. It sounded, that sounds right. It sounds nice and good. It sounded like what a good Christian was supposed to say, but it was a lie.
Yeah.
I discovered that while I was articulating what I believed to be acceptable Christian talk, I did not wholeheartedly agree with what I was saying. In the process, I discovered something about myself. I discovered that one of my greatest struggles with God was with the freedom of God. Now, if I'm really truthful, I have to admit that on many occasions I am uncomfortable with the freedom of God. Let me hasten to say this. Whatever God does is right. I just sometimes don't agree with what God does, how He does it, and why He does it. Oh, and who He does it for.
Come on, man.
And if you're honest, you'd have to admit that you're often in the same boat that I am. I've learned something about myself. I say a lot of stuff that other folk want to say, they just scared to say it. And as I proceed in this message today, listen carefully to what Jesus is saying to today's church as He talks to the people in this text. Jesus is going to make an important statement about the difference between persons with good religion and disciples. Now don't let that slip past you. Don't let that slip past you. Jesus will make it plain that what He considered as discipleship was radically different from what the typical person with good religion would consider to be acceptable. You see, Jesus declared that He had come to reach out to sinners. His mission was not so much to continue the practice of business as usual with reputable people. Yeah. Let me say something. Let me get off the text in just a minute, and this is hot off the press. I say something all the time. I say this and I say it at home, and this is the truth, whether we want to admit it or not. We really don't want everybody in our churches. Now we tell that lie, say, oh, we want everybody, but we really don't. If they don't look right, if they don't talk right, if they don't think they are who we think they ought to be, if we don't tell them to get out, we act like you ain't welcome here. One day, I'm just about through because I done already run out. One day as Jesus was walking along, the way, he saw a tax collector named Matthew. And he said to this tax collector, follow me. Now, according to the story, Matthew did just that. The emphasis here is on Matthew's unconditional acceptance of the invitation of Jesus. Matthew left a whole way, an entire way of life in order to follow Jesus. Matthew was a tax collector. Tax collectors were among the most hated people in Palestine. However, he and any tax collector could make a good living through extortion. You see, as a tax collector, in order to make money for himself, he was allowed by law to charge more than the actual tax bill. Yeah. The more the tax collector could extort and collect, the more he was hated. If the bill was $100, he might charge $110, $115. If he could get $125 or $30, well and good. That $30 or that $15 went into his pocket. Yeah. Now, on top of all of that, these tax collectors were working for the occupying government, which was Rome. That caused them to be looked upon as traitors. And on top of that, if they, the tax collectors, were Jews who regularly came into contact with Gentiles and other sinners, that made them religiously and ceremonially unclean. So tax collectors had 3 strikes against them before they came to bat. Nonetheless, this tax collector, this man named Matthew, left it all and followed Jesus. In verse 10, it says, and as he sat at dinner in the house. Undoubtedly, Matthew threw a party for Jesus. He's followed Jesus. He left his job, left the tax collecting booth, went on by his way. I don't know what the time span was, but he threw a party for Jesus. Luke calls it a great feast. And at this party, there were many tax collectors and sinners. Undoubtedly, they had been invited by Matthew. Get the picture here. Jesus, the God-man, Jesus, the great religious teacher, is at a party crowded with sinners and tax collectors, social outcasts. Are you getting what Jesus is communicating without saying a word yet?
Yeah, man.
Now, when the Pharisees saw this, the Pharisees, those persons with the good religion, they weren't at the dinner. No. They wouldn't be caught dead at such a dinner. However, like many reputable and respectable people, they were nosy. You know, if folk that got good religion, they wouldn't be caught dead in the tavern, but they want to know what's going on. They like to look at how everybody else was living their lives. They were nosy about what was going on, but they wouldn't go in because they were afraid of becoming unclean through any close association with people that they considered to be unclean. Have you ever heard anybody say something like this? Two clean sheets can't dirty up one another. Some folk don't even want to hang around other folk who ain't, good Christians like they are, because some of that stuff they scared might rub off on them. I ain't perfect, y'all, but I'm saved enough I can go anywhere I want to go. If my class has a reunion and they're meeting up at the local bar, if I want to go, I can go over to the local bar and have a good time with them. I can just order me a Coca-Cola. And if you ain't looking, I might tell the barkeeper, listen, no. I'm saved enough to know that little taste ain't gonna send me to hell. Let me get back home. You find my spot. These folk with good religion, they didn't go in, but they said to Jesus' disciples, they said to his disciples, they were too cowardly to face Jesus, so they complained to his disciples. They asked Jesus' disciples, how could Jesus, being a religious person, being a teacher of religion, associate with such riffraff? Jesus heard their conversation. Jesus heard what they were talking about, and he responded. And his response to them was, those who are well don't need a physician. Now don't let that slip past you. Don't let that slip past you. See the application. The Pharisees would have considered themselves to be well people, while the tax collectors and sinners were looked upon as sick people. Jesus was saying that he, the physician, came to help sick folk. He came to meet people where they are and help them to get to where they need to be. He didn't come to condemn people who are in need of salvation. He came to help them receive deliverance from their sin situation. The time is out for the church to condemn everybody that we think ain't right just because they don't dot all of their I's like we do and cross all of their T's like we do. Some of us cross our T's like this. Some of us cross our T's like this. But the T is still true. Jesus went a step further. Jesus went a step further to bring his message together. Down at verse 13, there Jesus had another word for these Pharisees, these good religion people. But that word is so relevant still for the 21st century church. Jesus quoted a passage from Hosea chapter 6, verse 6. Listen to what Hosea 6 and 6 says. I'm going to read it from the New Living Translation. It says, I want you to show love, not sacrifices. I want you to know me more than I want burnt offerings. Jesus ain't so concerned about how much and how often you come to church. He ain't so concerned about how many choirs you belong and how many usher bowls and all this kind of stuff you belong. He wants to know how you treating the sinner. How are you reacting to that person that the established church says God don't love? I just said something. And I'm so scared I'm going to let that alone and move on. The church was not called to condemn people. The church was called to condemn sin. And in the fact of condemning sin, we must be careful that we don't communicate to the sinner that we don't love the sinner. God is interested in your heart being in the right place. God is pleased when you show mercy and grace to the outcast rather than demonstrate condescending arrogance and condemnation. Jesus said, I didn't come to call the righteous, but sinners. He didn't come to congratulate the self-satisfied. You see, self-satisfied people, self-righteous people, consider people who are not like them to be sinners who are without hope. They look upon them as outside the scope of the mercy of God. Can you see what Jesus was doing? Jesus was really condemning those who would condemn others. Notice something right here. Jesus never said that the people he was concerned about were anything other than sinners. He never tried to pretend they were anything that they weren't. That was the point. He came to save sinners. He didn't try to avoid sinners. He intentionally reached out to sinners. We need to start, instead of asking other folk who already belong to a church, who already go to church, to come to our churches, we need to ask the folk who ain't never been in the church to come. Be careful, my brothers and my sisters. Be careful that you don't develop and harbor a Pharisee, a good religion mindset. Sin is a tricky thing. In so many ways, sin is characteristic of addiction. It infects everything, including our relationship with God. We can become addicted to good things. You see, on the face of it, laws, rituals, rules, and regulations, even doctrines can appear to be good things. If we're not careful, these good things can replace our relationship with and dependence upon God Himself. If we're not careful, we might find ourselves clinging to a dependency upon the means to relate to God rather than upon God Himself.
That's heavy, man.
When I was a youngster, I never shall forget, my mama told me that a man is never supposed to go inside the church with his coat unbuttoned. I ain't never liked a buttoned-up coat. I had to remember to make sure my coat was buttoned before I came up here. But I was a grown man, even to this, at 49 and a half plus. When I come in, he's trying to talk about my age. Said I'm going to let y'all know how old I am, 49 and a half plus. Even today, if I'm outside, when I get ready to go in, if my coat is like this before I walk in the door, I'm going to button it up. It ain't got nothing to do with my salvation. That's just what Mama told me. And I keep doing it, but if I ain't got no coat on, the Lord will accept me. If my coat is dirty, the Lord will accept me. The Lord wants my heart to be in relationship. Sometimes we get so caught up on stuff that God ain't got nothing to do with. At first, I'm just about to, y'all. At first, this addiction, talking about addiction, this addiction is subtle, but it grows, and if we're not careful, it can take over our lives. Pharisees, or good religion people in the New Testament, represent what we might call today religion addicts. They were so driven by their fixation on the external and the formal aspects of religion, rituals, commandments, human traditions that they cut themselves off from living in delightful relationship with God. Yes, God wants us to obey Him, but He also wants us to enjoy Him. God wants us to enjoy. I say all the time, my most effective prayers, Pastor, are not those prayers when I'm in the public, you know, and I got to pray the altar call prayer, or I got to pray this other prayer. I got to make sure that I sound like a good religious person when I pray that prayer. When I pray the altar call prayer, I got to make sure that I'm sounding pastoral. Now, I'm not saying that none of those prayers reach heaven. I think they reach heaven. But my most effective prayers are when I'm driving in my car. Ain't nobody there but me and Jesus. And I just start talking to him. Now, Lord, you know I wanted to slap that fella upside the head. Lord, you know they been out. Lord, you know if you don't hold me, I'm going to cuss somebody out. Lord, you better help me. Y'all ain't never had to say that. But that's when I'm really talking to the Lord. I'm being earnest and honest with Him. And I can feel His presence because He knows that I'm being honest and He accepts me as I am. Why I tell folk all the time, when I get to heaven, y'all gonna be around the throne somewhere looking for some milk and honey. I'm gonna be on the south side. I'm gonna be looking for Jesus. He's gonna be over there with me. Or somebody done cooked some greens. Some fat back in it. Some cornbread. Not cornbread, but some cornbread. God wants us to enjoy. I didn't eat milk and honey down here. I don't know when I get pork chops. Let me get back to this. These good religion people strictly observed the rituals. They honored the pious practices. They engaged in public fasting, wearing certain clothes and religious symbols. Yet, they came short of having a living relationship with God. And as a result, they were harshly judgmental of other people who weren't like them. They were arrogant and self-satisfied with their religious performance. Jesus pointed out that their lack of real relationship with God affected their relationship with other people. Jesus came to say that salvation is offered to everyone regardless of their state or their station in life. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to be perfect in order to be accepted into God's fellowship. You don't have to have all your I's dotted or all your T's crossed in order to be in right relationship with God. Just look at the people that Jesus hung out with. The individuals who made up the original 12 disciples were not a remarkable group. Yet Jesus called them to work for Him anyway. He knew all about their human limitations, yet He entrusted them with that important work. He knew it would be by His power and not by their qualities or endowments that His work would be done. I tell folk all the time, God, y'all's pastor is messed up.
Yes, sir.
I tell folk in a minute, your pastor, I don't know but one person who's saved and who's ever been saved. And that's me. I'm an old school teacher. You get the verb that I use? I don't know. If you say you're saved, I accept your word, but I don't know. But I know about my relationship with God. But at the same time that I know that I'm saved, I tell the folk that don't push me into that corner. I'm just trying to tell you that God accepts us in our imperfect state, but we're supposed to be giving ourselves, submitting ourselves more and more so that we won't be as guilty as often.
I like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
The Pharisees of the day, in the day of Jesus, and many good people of good religion of our day believe that they've achieved the state of holiness by virtue of their own personally acquired virtue. They believe that it's their responsibility to protect their religion from heresy because the rest of the people are too dumb to recognize what's false or what's wrong. They feel they need to guide, shame, force others into a right way of thinking. But Jesus wants to guide people into a loving relationship with God. Jesus is about rightness and righteousness. The Pharisees and the people of good religion were and are about correct and correctness. To be sure now, Jesus does not teach that anything goes. But what he taught was without a relationship, religion is just rules.
Yes, sir.
Without a relationship, religion is just regulations and empty rituals. How many of you know? Let's see if anybody can identify. I'm on the last page, y'all. Can anybody identify with me? Mama, Mama's the one you can kind of get over on. Oh, yeah. Mama the one you can kind of get on. But you make Mama mad. Mama say, I ain't gonna fix you nothing else to eat. I ain't gonna do this. I'm gonna whoop you. I'm gonna tell you that. I'm gonna do this. Get out of my way. Get out of my sight. And then about 2 seconds later, you hungry? Come on in here and eat something. I don't know about you, but I'm glad that I have a relationship with God. Because every now and then I upset God. But before he throws me out on the dump heap, he said, come on in here and get some. Come on in here and let me hug you. Come on in here and experience my love. Where are you? Has someone convinced you? Someone that you know that Jesus can't use you, that Jesus can't use them? Are you one of those people, or do you know somebody who believes that all you need to do in order to be right with God is just to do the right things and follow the right rules? Well, I got some news for you. Both notions are wrong. It's about being in relationship with God. If you're in right relationship with God, he will look beyond your faults. Whatever they are, he'll address your needs and use you in spite of ... Whatever your dots are, in spite of whatever your weaknesses are, God can and will use you. That's why I like that song that says, Amazing Grace.
Yes, sir.
Shall always be my song of praise. For it was grace that bought my liberty. I do not know just why he came to love me so. He looked beyond my faults and saw my need. I shall forever lift mine eyes to Calvary to view the cross where Jesus died for me. How marvelous the grace that caught my falling soul. He looked beyond my faults and saw